Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about natural treatments for those of you out there who might be suffering from thyroid or adrenal dysfunctions. A lot of times we wonder what kind of outcomes we get when we have those particular kind of elements that are helping us not to maybe feel so good. Well, we're going to take a natural approach today, and our guest also has a special interest in digestive problems, chronic fatigue, and hormonal issues. She is a naturopathic doctor, and her license allows her also to prescribe pharmaceuticals as well as help patients wean themselves off of them. Today, our guest believes that when the functioning of the whole body is addressed rather than isolated symptoms, amazing results can be achieved. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Dr. Della Parker. Dr. Parker, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you. No problem.
Now, tell us about some of the modalities and the ways that you like to approach health and healing, especially when it comes to what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, well, as a naturopath, I think it's always important to focus on treating a person rather than their disease, as every person that has, if there's 10 people with the same disease process, they'd all likely receive a different treatment because everybody's body is different. So I use things like dried blood cell analysis, which looks at the patient's blood under a microscope to give us an idea of what's going on, and then functional lab evaluation. That tells us, what's going on in the body with lab work-wise, like to identify things before they become a disease process and they're already out of range. Then I also use muscle testing, which helps me determine the best treatment plan for a patient.
Now, what exactly is muscle testing? How do you go about using that as a modality for understanding what's going on?
I always tell patients that the muscle testing portion of our visit is better explained when I actually am doing it on them. But I use a technique called nutritional response testing, and when I test reflex points over organs using a strong indicator muscle, your muscle will weaken when we access an organ system that's under stress in the body. And then we can test different herbs, homeopathics, and nutrients by just placing them on the body and seeing what supplement or herb is going to strengthen that reflex point. So sometimes my ideas of what a person's thyroid adrenals need for support doesn't fly with their body, so I'm letting their body tell me what things are really going to strengthen them and work well with their physiology.
It's pretty amazing to be in this kind of work because there's so many different approaches and disciplines to what people believe healing should be, but generally when it comes to naturopathic physicians, they tend to really, as you were saying earlier, they go to the whole root of what's going on rather than just the symptoms, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. The Western medical approach is to treat diseases and use pharmaceuticals, and that's definitely indicated in certain instances, but there's this huge spectrum of illness that's not yet a disease process that warrants a prescription, but people are feeling crummy, and so that's where, things like muscle testing and dried blood cell analysis, finding things early to correct them, is really important.
Now, we were mentioning earlier about adrenal dysfunctions and fatigue and hypo and hyperthyroidism. In detail, describe first of all what the adrenals actually do, and when they become stressed, what kinds of things can people experience? How do you go about the approach, generally speaking, in trying to address this?
So the adrenal glands are your stress handlers of the body primarily. They do lots of other things, but anytime somebody has a stress response, whether it's, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you kind of have this little surge of adrenaline, and it's cortisol surges all throughout the day that are managing stresses and helping to manage inflammation in the body. So over time, just imagine a lifetime of not really knowing about adrenals or not knowing how to support them. We can be stressed out in little ways by poor diet, not enough sleep, not enough exercise, just the toxins we breathe in our environment. We're all stressed out in our culture. So supporting the adrenal glands is super important. They also make backbones of hormones. They help to manage blood sugar. They work with the thyroid gland to run your metabolism. They have their little fingers in lots of jobs and processes in the body. So not supporting them, your health is bound to go downhill.
Now, what causes a lot of the, I guess, stresses that happen to the adrenal glands? It sounds like they take on quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the Western medicine approach, they don't necessarily...
Somehow when you say that, I picture knives and cleavers and, who knows?
Well, when somebody goes to the doctor and they're tired, which is a symptom, the most common symptom of adrenal fatigue is people are just tired. And like I said, medically they don't look at adrenal fatigue until adrenals have ceased function altogether. And then that's called Addison's disease, and they can treat it with a prescription or hormone replacement. So on the scale of your adrenals heading towards burnout, there's nothing that they can do because they don't have a nutrition education and know how to supplement them. And so people just continue to get worse and worse, especially with these medical interventions of when people get inflamed, they give cortisone injections or steroids, which, can help. It's like a little Band-Aid. It can help, but then it actually makes things worse in the long run because you never supported the adrenal glands to pick up the slack. But I see patients, not only being tired, but they have poor injury healing. They can't get knee injuries or shoulder injuries to ever really get better. The classic adrenal patient has the triad of asthma, allergies, and eczema, which are all inflammatory conditions. So if your adrenals aren't secreting cortisol properly to maintain the inflammation in the body and take care of it, then these types of things can just get worse and worse.
Oh, wow. It just seems like so much.
It really is. The adrenals are huge. They, like I said, they manage blood sugar. There's just so many things that the adrenals do.
Now, how do you go about approaching to be able to relieve that stress? Are there real basic things people can do?
Oh, for sure. Very basic. Your adrenals work in a rhythm, as do many things in your body. The cortisol rhythm, you should have the highest cortisol in the morning and then the lowest at night so you can sleep. So by getting in a routine, a daily schedule, so that cycle can start making a habit in your body is important. So waking up at the same time every day, going to sleep at the same time every night, that's important to help that cycle start regulating. The other thing is people classically, they hit a wall at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and need caffeine or something to stimulate them. And that's kind of going against this natural cycle. So it kind of shunts your adrenals to try to kicking out more cortisol at the wrong time when it should actually be heading down naturally. So cutting that out and doing other healthful things to stimulate energy at that time. But then there's basic things like eating lots of protein helps rebuild them and stabilize your blood sugar. Vitamin C has the highest concentration of vitamin C in the body is the adrenal glands. So that really helps to support them. B vitamins and then glandulars, which generally people can get from their naturopaths. Those help to rebuild the organ. And then besides that, there's lots of different herbs that help with adrenal fatigue. Licorice, astragalus, rhamania. But that's where I feel like the muscle testing is helpful to kind of narrow down what's going to really benefit the patient the most.
Now, it's interesting because as I'm on your website, I like your approach about this, that you say that it is very difficult to restore health without a 50-50 partnership. And I think what's really interesting, especially here in America, is that's how we've kind of come to the state of our health care, is that we wait, we sometimes maybe have habits that really aren't healthy for us, and over time the body begins to wear down, and then what do? Like our car, we take it to a mechanic and we turn over the whole problem to them and expect, a great success rate. But the thing is when you think about, indigenous cultures around the world, and especially the traditional and the history of treatment, that you see that there is really more of a proactive approach from the patient, if you will, on the addressment of healing. And that's how you pretty much approach it as well, don't you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I like that you brought up the car analogy because we change our oil pretty frequently, to keep things running in the car, but we don't check in on our own bodies. We just wait till, the engine stops working before we are like, oh, something's wrong, I should get some help. And a lot of times by that point, it's really hard to go backwards and, get to a place of health. So, yeah, with my patients, it's like I can recommend things, but if they're not implementing lifestyle changes that I'm recommending, then, no supplement is going to heal everything. People have to start eating healthy, moving their bodies around, drinking water, like the basics that people have just forgotten about.
Now, you see a lot of patients that, also have a thyroid dysfunction. Exactly what does the thyroid do, and what are some of the things people experience when that just isn't working the way it should?
Yeah, so your thyroid, people classically know it as it runs your metabolism. So sometimes, women are pretty knowledgeable about, I can't lose weight, my thyroid must not be working. And while that's true, every cell in your entire body has a receptor for T3, which is active thyroid hormone. So when you have low thyroid function, it really can affect your entire body. People have fatigue, inability to lose weight, constipation, poor memory, hair loss, dry skin, elevated cholesterol.
Sounds like most people who are in Congress.
Right?
Now we can understand why they all have white hair,
Yeah. Very true.
And what are some of the other things?
Also, cold hands and feet.
Okay.
And depression is a big one, too.
Ooh, that doesn't sound very good. Now, exactly what does the thyroid do?
Like I said, your thyroid runs your metabolism. It provides energy to your cells.
Very good. That's pretty interesting stuff. Now, I love that all of your approaches are something that people can actually do, especially in the beginning when you talk about, using nutritional approaches to this. What exactly do you encourage people to do when it comes to that?
For thyroid specifically?
Well, just in general for the treatment of thyroid and adrenal dysfunctions, because, we live in a world today that everybody's telling us what's best for us.
Right.
And nobody really takes the time, it seems, I shouldn't say nobody, but a fair amount of people who tend to take the approach of not listening to their body, again, just kind of turning the whole thing over to a doctor who's supposed to know exactly what it is they need to do to move them to a state of health they want to achieve. But the fact is we inherently really know, what to move toward and how to be coached correctly.
No, this is true. I think that, like I said, you give somebody a pill and it makes them feel better, but they're not correcting why they got there in the first place. So it's frustrating when lifestyle issues aren't being addressed. Dietarily, I just look back to history. Cavemen, our bodies were meant to eat protein and veggies. We've got, these teeth that shred and tear meat. We have stomach acid to break down dense protein. Our bodies are really meant to be eating animal protein. Every cell in our body, we need collagen to lay down healthy joints. We need a healthy amino acid profile to have healthy cells in our body. So a lot of vegetarians that I see, it's just very hard to get them well. So I really think that health starts with eating meat. People will say that it feels gross in their stomachs or they can't digest it, and generally that's because over time, when they're not eating dense protein, their body has down-regulated stomach acid that breaks it down. So they need to kind of train their body to remake that so that they can break it down and integrate it in their bodies properly.
Now, it's interesting for you to say that you tend to have a slower time with vegetarians, yet these are those same people, at times they become very loud, self-righteous when it comes to their diet. But the fact is, like you were saying, as humans, we were actually born to eat animal protein. That's part of our diet, maybe not a significant part, but it is there. Is it generally, I guess, a religious or a special belief that they take on that makes them believe that this is a diet that seems superior than the typical way that we were made to eat?
What I see mostly is that it's a moral issue because of, the love of animals.
Sure.
which I understand, but I just say, say a prayer over your meat, and this is, actually nourishing you to be a better person, to maybe spread the word better about treating animals humanely. Because, like I said, you just can't really be healthy. I try to get my really vegetarians or, really don't want to go towards the meat, just to eat eggs at least, because eggs is a complete protein. So if they can do that several times a day, it certainly gets boring just eating eggs every day, all day, but it can be done if they're at least doing that.
Well, there's that, or you can always do it just like Rocky did, crack about 4 or 5 into a glass and swallow them down. This must be a lot of fun for you approaching the kind of work that you do and helping people move into different directions, isn't it?
I mean, every day is different for sure. Like I said, I'll have on my list of patients in the day, I'm like, oh, this person's tired, but it's always for a different reason. People's guts are always messed up for a different reason, so it's definitely an adventure.
Now, I know that you use a technique known as neuro-emotional technique. What exactly is that? See, I'm talking about these different things for our listeners so they realize, so you're not going to come in and do some blood work and all of a sudden tell me, that I need to, for instance, with the vegetarians, just eat eggs. But there's more going on here to this than just what may be stressing the body to cause these abnormalities that people actually suffer from.
Oh, yeah. So neuroemotional technique is, just looking at how emotions get stored in the body and can cause disruption. A great example of that is, if somebody's in a car accident and, they have this image or fear surrounding that accident, and they kind of store that memory somewhere in their body, and it can disrupt an organ function. As funny as that sounds, people have, emotions stuck in different organ systems. And so, example, the liver is generally associated with anger. So a lot of times I see men in my practice that come in and, their wives are like, yeah, he's quick to be angry, he's very hot-tempered, and you can just see they're very fiery. And if we can find the correlation with the liver being correlated to this anger, and we use different homeopathics and different ways to identify this, the emotions can actually be released, so people's whole emotional state changes as well as the health of the organ that it's affecting.
It's also fascinating. What about Meridian Therapy? That was one I noticed.
Meridian Therapy, so it's different from acupuncture. Acupuncture, is a whole other study for sure. But there are certain points on the body, acupuncture points, there's Chapman reflex points, and they can be stimulated with anything. It doesn't have to be needles. So pressure, just rubbing them out, a lot of times we'll find different meridian points that are tender, and we just rub them out, and it makes a big difference for the organ system that's involved.
Now, just to let our listeners know, Dr. Parker here has actually struggled with her own health problems, and this is pretty much what led you to what you're doing today. Tell us about that and how you came to change and have that shift in your life. Well,
I always say that my life was changed by a Craigslist ad.
Imagine Craig.
Yeah, I know. Right out of college, I was the classic allergy, eczema, and asthma patient. And I answered a Craigslist ad to work as a receptionist at a holistic clinic. And at my interview, I didn't know what holistic medicine was. And they said, oh, don't worry, we'll train you. And just by being treated by the chiropractor and the naturopath in the office there and having my eyes opened to not just using steroids to treat those things, to looking at my diet and taking adrenal support and things like that, my whole health changed. What's really interesting is even my posture changed. There's a picture of me standing in front of our sign when I first got hired, and we revisited that, and it's just amazing how your whole posture will change when your health gets addressed. But my journey, it always continues with diet and lifestyle. We live in the real world, not a perfect world, so I by no means eat perfectly and have a completely stress-free lifestyle, but definitely found more success with my health using natural therapies as compared to the Western therapies I was using my whole life prior to that.
You know, and a lot of years of broadcasting, I hear the same thing, and it sounds like it's coming through you as well, that doctors say 90+% of a lot of our ailments can be relieved just simply by managing and reducing stress. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing in a way.
I mean, stress is huge. People just, we kind of brush it aside like, oh, yeah, stress. But stress response, like I said, it greatly affects the adrenal glands, which affects so many parts of our body. I just tell people if they can take, just 2 minutes to do some deep breathing exercises a couple times a day, it can calm their nervous system down, lower their blood pressure, and have great effects with getting through the day and feeling a lot better.
Now, of those that you tend to work with and treat, how often do you find them having problems sleeping, and if that's an area that they really need to address?
Oh, a lot of people have problems sleeping, and it's a lot of times for different reasons. When a lot of doctors test adrenal glands, I don't really, and I'll tell you why, but when you test them, generally what you find with people that have messed up function is that, like I said, the cortisol should be highest in the morning and lowest at night. So people are either completely flatlined or they have an inverse relationship because of that, trying to stimulate your body at 3, 4 o'clock. People end up getting cortisol surges at nighttime, preventing them from sleep. So I think it's definitely important to address the adrenals for that. But also, everybody's walking around taking melatonin, and it is not the health remedy for sleep. I'm here to tell you. I mean, when you take melatonin, you're replacing what your body should naturally be making, and then your body just stops making it because it's in your bloodstream from the supplement you're taking, and then you can never get off of it because your body's addicted. Mm-hmm. So I like to work on precursors to melatonin with people to help your body increase its own production.
Now, what's interesting as you bring that up is that you actually do work with pharmaceuticals, but you do it in a more, I guess, practical and, I suppose, responsible way where, it moves people in the direction, but then you slowly pull them off. Tell us why it can be important to use pharmaceuticals, as a first wave before moving into a more natural approach.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I use pharmaceuticals when indicated for sure. Some people need them. But an example is, metformin for diabetes. Some people need to get their blood sugar under control, but we know that metformin depletes B12, so we really need to be replenishing that if we're using that medication. And, cholesterol medications deplete CoQ10, and so you need to replace that if you're using the medication, just to have your body tolerating it better.
Fascinating stuff. Now, how can people find out more about your work?
They can go to my website, which is www.drdellaparker.com.
Now, I think what's really impressive, because like I said, for the listeners out there, be sure to visit the website. You'll learn quite a bit. But what I really like about what I'm seeing in the languages, especially in your frequently asked questions, is people are concerned if they come to see you because you're considered to be a naturopathic physician, is that something insurance recognizes as real medicine, but you're seeing more and more and more that are leaning in that direction, just mainly because of the preventative care aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in network with Regents, Blue Cross Blue Shield, as well as Kaiser and Pacific Source. Lots of insurance companies other than that will cover naturopathic medicine. It really just depends on the patient's plan. Obviously, you pay for what you get. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive to get the comprehensive insurance plan that covers alternative care, but it's definitely increasing out there in popularity.
And what's really interesting, too, for people to take a look at a holistic approach to health and health care is this. It astounds me sometimes, especially when it comes to, let's say, nutritional supplementation. I know that's an area that you help work with people as well, don't you?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So, there are a lot of companies out there that alleged have a lot of great products, and people will look and they'll say, well, that just seems so expensive, or that's a lot of money for that. And you got to come to realize, well, you're seeing what seems to be the front-end cost. But as you start creating the habits around this particular way, you'll begin to see those costs, I would think, reduced because you'll start having or making different choices like what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat, things like that. And then on the back end, if you don't make those changes, it's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive than what you're facing now, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. And the one thing to mention about supplements is the thing that I feel worst about is when I see somebody really trying to make a change for their health, and they come in with like a Costco brand bulk supplement of some sort, and they're really trying, but a lot of the over-the-counter supplement companies do a really poor job, and they're supplements that your body doesn't even, like the calcium is made in a form that your body doesn't even absorb. You literally just pee out these nutrients because they're in cheaply made forms that your body doesn't recognize and can't absorb. So that's the biggest difference between, physician-grade supplements. They really have all the cofactors and nutrients so that your body can get it in the cells and start working. So some people, I've heard even studies on the news about, studies show supplements are not helping, and I'm like, exactly, over-the-counter supplements aren't helping. I wish they would clarify.
Well, that's very important for you to note because it's easy how vague the news can be, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
They'll say that and all of a sudden it's like, really, but the fact is that supplementation does work.
Oh, for sure. We got to replenish nutrient deficiencies in people. Eating a healthy diet is important, but our soil is so depleted that our food doesn't contain as many nutrients as it once did. So it really is important to get these things condensed in a pill form so that we're getting the proper amounts in our body.
I know there were many years ago as I was much, much younger and I was doing warehouse work where I was a receiving clerk for a pharmaceutical company, I was really astounded to think, really, this goes in the pills that people take, really? And I was kind of surprised by some of the ingredients. For instance, one of them was spun fine glass. I thought, wow, is that really good for the body? And I began to wonder because you started hearing the things like from plumbers, well, you'd be surprised how often we clean out sewage tanks, and we find vitamins that went undigested and unbroken down. And then again, as you were saying, there's the news broadcast that says, well, supplementation doesn't work, and there's a lot of vagueness around that. But you're saying that, this is something that a lot of us need because we just aren't really getting it on our food the way that we used to, are we? Well, it sounds like Dr. Della Parker probably had a quick emergency to help with somebody, but you can find out more about her work at her website, which is www.drdellaparker.com. That's DRDELLAPARKER.com, drdellaparker.com, and find out the more naturalistic approach to how you can actually help yourself feel better. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.